Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Hello, welcome to the State of Wellbeing podcast. I'm Shari Landmark, Chief Wellness Officer at South Dakota State University. I'm thrilled today to have Victoria joining us. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Victoria Dubbelde. I'm an accounting lecturer on campus with the Ness School of Management and Economics.
Great. Well, the month of January, we are celebrating and learning how to be financially fit. So many people think about New Year's resolutions of, getting into the gym, which, is kind of my area, but being also financially fit. So we've got some episodes and really a series of 4 episodes that we will be talking about financially or how to be financially fit today. So, let's just kind of start off. We're going to today talk about taxes, some people's favorite topic during the month of January as the calendar turns. But I'm really talking about, what does that paper trail look like, what to keep, what to toss. And I have a feeling I might learn a few things today too. So first of all, we're going to just start off, what are important documents for students and young adults to understand about tax recording?
The most simple document that you need if you had a job is a W-2, right? That's the tax form that you're going to get from your employer showing how much you made during the year. That's if you're employed, regular, weekly, biweekly, whatever paycheck that you get, that's what is reported on your W-2. So that's the main one. Understanding how all of that flows into the tax return, that's a whole separate topic, but we'll stick with just the tax forms that the individual taxpayer gets, to show their income.
So if a student does work on campus, for say, where would they go and look for this document, and when may it be available?
I believe the W-2s are already available. We have a new platform to get the W-2s, the HR platform, and I can't think of the name of the new platform at the moment. Experience is the new platform, yes. And I believe they're available electronically if you opted in to receive it electronically, or it will be mailed to the address that you provided the university when you filled out your W-4 and started employment. So that might either be your address in Brookings or on campus, or it might be mom and dad's house. It depends on where you put that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip for students to know that, it might not be coming to their res hall, or in Brookings, their address might be at home. So to have mom and dad watch for that. If they choose to have it mailed to them, what's that date that I'm trying to think how.
Deadline for the...
Yes. When is the deadline?
The deadline for the employers to issue the forms is January 31st. They have to have it mailed by that date, so that doesn't mean you will receive it right on January 31st. It might take a few days to arrive at home.
Okay, great. I think that's helpful. So if people think, the calendar turns on January 1, I should be receiving these documents, it might take a little longer. So can you maybe talk about maybe some misconceptions that people have about keeping tax documents?
You don't necessarily have to keep everything forever. And when you go to get your taxes done, or when you're doing them yourself, maybe there's certain things that a tax preparer is not going to need to see. So, for example, if you're claiming medical expenses, you don't necessarily need to bring all of the doctor bills to your tax preparer. You can just give them a total. And if it's reasonable, they don't need to verify it, those types of things. Now, you'll still want to keep records for a while, but you don't necessarily have to bring all the receipts in the shoebox to your tax preparer.
That is a great question, or statement, I should say. So how long should you keep documents? I mean, I've heard sometimes 7 years, sometimes 3 years. What's kind of the best rule of thumb?
That's about a good range, actually, 3 to 6 years, because the IRS can start an audit within 3 years. But if they see that there's an issue, or they suspect that there's an issue, they can go back 6 years. In very extreme cases where there might be fraud, tax fraud, things like that, they can go back further, but they'd have to get a legal extension of statute of limitations. So 3 to 6 years is pretty reasonable. I think for most taxpayers that are not self-employed, so they're not claiming a bunch of crazy expenses. They just have their W-2s, maybe some retirement income on a 1099-R, maybe some interest or dividends. That 3 years would be fine because the IRS is going to receive copies of all of those types of tax documents. And if the 3 years have passed and they haven't contacted you, you're probably in the clear in those cases.
Okay, great. So what types of documents? You've talked about the W-2, the 1099s. What are maybe some other essential documents that a student or anyone for that matter would need to file their taxes?
So I do run a free tax program on campus. It's called VITA. It stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. It's IRS-sponsored program. And my Accounting 430 students, they're my income tax accounting students. They get certified by the IRS. We had training already this week. We'll train again next week. And we open for business on January 28th, which is a Tuesday night. We'll be open every Tuesday night from 6 to 9 p.m. And then we have 3 Saturdays during the tax season as well from 9 a.m. till noon. And, they're February 15th, March 1st, and March 29th. And what we always tell people when they come in to get your taxes done, first of all, make sure you have photo ID. Make sure you have all those W-2s. College students in particular tend to have several jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. Yes.
So make sure you have your W-2 from every job that you had. If you had interest, you'll have what's called a 1099 INT. If you had dividends, it's a 1099 DIV. If you did any stock trading, you'll need a 1099B. Another huge document that we ask students to bring us, and we might not need it. It depends on whether or not mom and dad are claiming you, but your 1098T that shows your tuition and your scholarships that you received from the school. That's very important because in some cases, scholarships might be taxable income.
Yes, I was going to mention tuition, so I'm glad that you mentioned that. Where do they go to find out or to sign up maybe for your classes, or do you need to sign up for it?
Well, to actually participate as a preparer in the class, it's the income tax accounting class. It's Accounting 430. Accounting 211 is a prerequisite for it, which means you'd have to take Principles of Accounting 1 and Principles of Accounting 2 as prerequisites for it. But the tax class is actually picked up in popularity as an upper-level elective for our students in the Nest School because you might as well learn how to do your taxes if you need an upper-level business elective, right?
So yes. Why not, right?
And that whole class is about individual income tax returns. So the only business stuff we get into is some sole proprietorship, which is on a Schedule C. And we talk about what's deductible for business expenses, those types of things. And then some of the students in that class choose to participate in the VITA program. And so starting last year, we created a seminar class, Accounting 490, which is for VITA. So students can get 3 additional upper-level accounting credits by doing VITA also. And with the new introduction of the accounting major last fall, we got our seminar class, the VITA class, approved by the South Dakota Board of Accountancy to count as upper-level accounting credits for the CPA exam. It's great experiential learning, but it also provides a service for the campus and the community. It is open. The VITA site is open to the community. So, we did 82 tax returns last spring.
Wow, that is awesome. And hopefully after today's episode, more people will know about it. I didn't know. See, I said I was going to learn something today. So that's great. VITA, I've never heard of it. So thank you. Awesome.
One other thing that students, if they do come to a VITA program or they go somewhere to get their taxes prepared, make sure you have your bank account information with you, because if you get that almighty refund, you want it direct deposited. It's a lot quicker than a paper check, which might end up getting sent to mom and dad's house anyway. So make sure you have bank information with you as well.
That actually leads into the next question, is what it really is the difference between like the physical and digital tax record keeping, and are both valid?
Yes, the IRS accepts both digital and physical copies, and it's more of a digital world. And for taxpayers that have a business and they have more to document, it gets tedious sometimes keeping physical receipts. So as long as you have sufficient documentation, it does not matter if it's physical printed copies versus digital is fine.
So what to keep? What maybe is some important records for like deductions? We talked a little bit about the educational expenses or charitable donations for a student.
Yeah, so you always want to keep receipts and records. Again, your educational expenses, most of which will show up in the 1098-T, but if you paid for books, any supplies specific to a course is deductible, but it has to be specific to a course and required for a course. So that might be more commonly used in things where you have labs and you have to purchase lab equipment. Those types of things are all deductible. Room and board is not deductible as an education expense. So that's why if you do have scholarships and it goes above and beyond your tuition and fees and books, some of the scholarships might be applied to room and board, which makes them taxable. So that's why you want to have good documentation of that. Now, education credits are a little bit different than some of the deductions, like charitable deductions. So charitable contributions, medical expenses, those types of things are all part of itemized deductions. But you'd need a pretty significant amount, like over $13,000, before it would make any difference on your taxes. So while we can input it and you can bring it with, that's wonderful, but it might not have any effect on your return. And so, everyone hears how charitable contributions are tax deductible, and they are, but only if you itemize. Another thing is if you give cash, you have to have a receipt or you can't take that charitable deduction, and it has to be to a nonprofit. So things like GoFundMes, those types of things are not deductible.
Great. That's awesome. That's, talking about the uncommon documents that people forget or that know that they, if they do want to have that as a deduction, that they would need that receipt. Wonderful. All right, so now we talked about what to keep, what you need, what to toss. Like, what tax-related documents can we safely discard, and how can we safely discard those after we file our taxes?
Anything that's you end up not reporting on the return, like if you did do charitable contributions, but you end up not itemizing, you don't need to maintain those records. You can get rid of those. If it's not income or a deduction, you need to keep any documents related to income that you're reporting or expenses that you're deducting, either one. But again, only that 3 to 6 year window. And if it has any personally identifiable information or PII, you want to have it shredded. Like if your social security number's on there, name, address, any of that stuff, it's probably most safe to have it shredded.
All right, moving on to maybe some practical tips. What are some best practices for organizing the tax records and to avoid maybe that stress when filing time comes along?
Most of the tax documents will arrive in January. So putting them aside someplace where you know they are and you don't have to go digging for them when it's time to file is recommended. If you are self-employed, though, and you are keeping track of expenses throughout the year, that's a whole different level of having to track and record keeping. And it depends on the amount of expenses that you have and how you're going to calculate those. So, for example, if you deduct mileage because you're self-employed, you need to track the miles driven for business purposes. And there's different apps that can help you track that, things like that, to make it a lot easier than the old days where you had record books and you had to handwrite in logs. I mean, some taxpayers are still doing that, and that's fine as well. Keeping receipts, some of these receipts are small, so taping them to a piece of paper and keeping them in a folder or a binder throughout the year is helpful. Or there's a lot of scanning apps that you can use. There's a ton of them. I have a few, but some of the apps are like Everlance, Expensify, and SimplyWise are a couple of apps that some taxpayers can use to scan their receipts so they don't have to keep all of that paper. And everything is recorded, and you can apply what expense it goes to for your business too, so that it's easier to tally everything up at the end of the year.
Very nice. I know even I've been doing some scanning pictures at home, right, with Google Docs, and you can actually, scan a document versus take a picture. And so if you maybe didn't have a lot of expenses that you want to track, even just scanning that into a folder to have, I think is a great idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So how can students or new taxpayers transition to paperless record keeping while ensuring security? I think is a big thing.
Absolutely. And a lot of these apps have some of those security features built in and multi-factor authentication and all of that to access the apps, those types of things. So making sure you password protect things, all of that is important. You'd still want to keep those documents, even if it's digital, for a certain time frame, just in case the IRS comes knocking on your door.
Moving on to maybe some student-specific challenges. So what should students know about keeping those records for scholarships, grants, and student loan interest? You talked a little bit about scholarships already, but what about grants or student loan interest?
Grants will usually be reported on the 1098-T with the scholarships. So box 5 of the 1098-T lists your scholarships and grants. So that's separate, but student loan interest is on a 1098-E. You'll get that from your lender only if you made payments during the year with interest, and that's not an itemized deduction. So students can take advantage if they paid any student loan interest as an adjustment to their income. It'll reduce their income. So you can deduct up to $2,500 of student loan interest paid in a year.
Interesting. Once again, another new fun fact I've learned, especially with 2 college kids in at SDSU right now. So, if someone had lost maybe some important documents, how would you suggest maybe searching those out or trying to find those?
So the only real way is to go back to the source. So we get a lot of students that come to us and say, I don't have this W-2. I don't know what happened to it. Can we do our taxes anyway? And unfortunately, the answer is no. You do need to go back to that employer and request another copy or request access. The issue is the IRS gets a copy of everything. So if you file your return with a missing document, they do a name and social security number match with documents. So it's eventually going to realize that this income wasn't reported. So you don't want to just leave it off your return because it could create larger problems down the road. So you want to go back to the source, whoever issued the document, whether it was a bank or financial institution for interest or dividends or something like that, or an employer for a W-2 or other forms of income.
Is there a document maybe available that is kind of like a checklist that, you might need this, and this for anyone, not just college students? So they make sure that you get all the documents turned in all at once so you maybe aren't forgetting something.
Yeah, even the IRS creates kind of reminder lists like that at irs.gov, and you can search out like a tax checklist. The IRS website's really fairly well organized, so they have good tools, and they're very good at updating for each tax year. You can also do a simple Google search, and there's all sorts of companies out there that provide tax preparation services that also have those sort of checklists available.
Great. What is the biggest mistake people make when it comes to the tax record keeping when they come in and start with their preparation?
I think that a lot of taxpayers don't understand that a tax return is a whole picture of your financial situation for the year. So you have to hand your tax preparer all your documents. Don't do one at a time and just sort of wait for them to fumble through your return, because everything is connected in a tax return. And so if someone is helping you, if you come to our VITA program or you go somewhere else for assistance, you want to make sure that you give that preparer all the information up front. For our VITA program, for instance, we're certified to only do certain types of returns. So if someone came in with several rental properties, or we're not even allowed to do tax returns where there's trades on digital assets, cryptocurrency, digital assets, that's a whole separate beast. So we're not certified for that. No VITA program is. And so we need to know that up front. So make sure you have everything with you. Make sure you understand your tax situation. If you had a job where you received tips, you're supposed to keep records of any cash tips to report that on your taxes as well. So just making sure you're prepared, have those documents with you, have your photo ID and your bank information as well. And, just be confident in the person that's helping you. They're there to assist. And if you have any questions, always ask the person preparing your return. They should be able to help you.
I think the tips piece of it, especially in the food service, we have so many students working downtown and across the community to help with that. And I think the tips is maybe something that they think, that's just a little bonus in my pocket. But really, at the end of the day, it is considered an annual wage or an hourly wage for them.
Correct. And a lot of restaurants or bars will report tips on the W-2 and take a portion of. So the whole reason you're supposed to report your tips is to pay the Social Security, Medicare, the FICA taxes that normally come out of a paycheck. Well, you can't withhold that from tips, right? So a lot of times they will do calculations based either on percentage of sales for your tables or your tickets, or they'll do it based on your hours, those types of things. So there will be some reported, but you are supposed to be keeping logs of any cash tips received for your different shifts and report that separately if it's not already on your W-2.
Okay. Well, if you're listening and you are unaware that your employer, if you do get tips, a great time to ask them how that works, right?
Absolutely.
So what is a tip that you would like to give someone that's maybe just starting their tax journey?
Don't be stressed out about it. A lot of tax preparation is data entry, so it's not as bad as it seems. It's way easier than you think. Once you start getting into self-employment and stuff, that's where it gets complicated. But for the average taxpayer, it's really quite simple. And any tax software, they're really just data entry. You have a screen that will match all the boxes on the W-2, and you just type in what you see exactly on the form in front of you.
Great. Awesome. So kind of our last statement question, where can listeners find some reliable resources, which have already been mentioned today, but we kind of want to just kind of bring it back. I'll kind of wrap it up, I guess, but find reliable resources for learning more about taxes and just record keeping altogether.
Yeah, so IRS.gov, again, is a really good resource. I've been teaching my students already within the first week of class how to search within that website for different information. There's a lot of tax preparation companies like Intuit that owns TurboTax. They have groups that write blogs and help articles on different tax topics. Other tax preparation software companies have that as well. So when you're searching for things, look for those types of sources versus just someone down the street, their blog, or maybe more opinion on tax things. Look for reliable sources on how that particular tax topic that you're searching for, how it works.
Great. This has been wonderful. I hope our listeners out there have learned a few things, as I've mentioned a few times during the episode. I have too. I think it's always good to get some refreshers and reminders of how we can do this and not be stressed out, right? Because it's not going away. Every year it rolls around. So I want to thank you, Victoria, for coming today and being part of the State of Wellbeing podcast. Just don't forget to subscribe, leave some reviews, and share these episodes with friends. You never know who could learn a little something more. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.